Hello and welcome back to the AI Ethics Now podcast. My name is Tom Ritchie, and today I'm really pleased to be joined by Marni Baker-Stein and Jack Moran. Marni is Coursera's Chief Content Officer, and Jack is Coursera's Global Enterprise PR Manager. Coursera is one of the world's largest online learning platforms with nearly 200 million registered learners globally. Marni and Jack join me today to discuss Coursera's 2026 AI on Campus report. Marni, I wonder if we could start with you introducing the report for us, please, and going through some of the findings.
Sure. So we are super excited about this report. And essentially, what we found, which may surprise some and maybe not others, is that AI use is now effectively ubiquitous throughout higher education. Among all the faculty and students who we surveyed, over 95% of respondents reported being users of AI tools in their educational context and in the flow of their work, whether that's learning or research. Students and faculty alike are pretty positive about AI's impact on higher education, with 81% of students and educators saying that their use of AI in sort of managing their tasks is really positively influencing their experience in higher education. And they're pretty optimistic about the potential for AI to facilitate personalized learning right now and increasingly into the future. So that's all really, really great impact, I would say, that AI is bringing to the higher education experience. But even though that's all positive, we also saw that across the faculty we surveyed, that they are still pretty concerned about regulation and governance and their own individual preparedness and their institutions' preparedness to really deal with the tidal wave of change that AI is bringing, with only about 26% of faculty responding that their institution has any kind of formal policy governing AI use. And while students really love that AI is enhancing their learning rather than replacing traditional study methods, they still worry, I think, just a little bit that there's so much mystery around AI that folks will wonder about the value of their credentials. And so it was a super exciting survey, lots learned and lots to dig into.
And when you saw the findings come together, this usage doubling, grades improving, but educator confidence ultimately falling, what was your initial reaction?
What's really interesting about it is that it's clear that there's a tension. Students are not only keeping up with, but also like clearly benefiting from this emerging technology. Of course, with this rapid adoption come real concerns about academic integrity and misuse and retaining that human connection in education and in learning. And I think that's where this lack of confidence among educators is coming from. The learners' use cases of AI is outpacing their own infrastructure and training for tracking it and understanding and applying it. And it's really essential that we start building the necessary support for these faculty and the structures in these institutions that will assure ethical use of AI in higher ed and really boost the confidence in faculty for instructors and how they're deploying it in their classes and in their educational experiences.
The report looks at 5 different countries. And I wanted to ask if you think the UK is an outlier in these results, or do you think we're just further along the path that every other country is heading down?
In part, it is because the foundational models, the LLMs, are still very much grounded in English. And so we're seeing much deeper uses across the board in the UK and the US than other parts of the world who are still catching up. The rates of usage are really high. Almost half of the UK students that we surveyed say that they're using AI to complete their study tests. And this is double last year's amount and the highest of all countries surveyed by Coursera. I think learners everywhere, and perhaps particularly in the UK because of the nature of your system, where there is perhaps more independent learning than in the US or in other contexts, that UK students are really using AI to sort of figure out how to break out their pathway of studies. They're figuring out how to accelerate and enable sort of the tasks that they have to do to prepare for writing papers, taking exams. And they're doing so to great effect in terms of their perception, at least, of the learning that they're doing and the progress that they're making with the help of these tools.
One of the things I just want to add there, Tom, is that though we are definitely spotting some country by country differences, I think that when we're talking about institutional readiness, we definitely want to emphasize that though there are small deltas between countries, the UK is at 30% of faculty saying there's a policy, globally it's 26%. Those are, in the context of the survey, relatively small deltas. So we'd want to stress that there's an overall global picture emerging here, which is that faculty want more consistent guidance and more explicit policies from their institutions on how, from both the student and a faculty perspective, they can best manage AI.
I'm currently working in the US, and it's really interesting to see the contrast between different AI policies within faculties and the guidance that staff are wanting and the support to integrate AI effectively into assessment design. The report shows that 80% of UK students are saying that AI has improved their grades, and this is up from 52% last year. But I wonder, what are we actually measuring here, do you think? Are these better grades telling us perhaps what we think they are? Or is it that AI is doing more of the cognitive heavy lifting?
It's an interesting question. I mean, the data shows us that the definition of academic success is shifting. If AI is handling the cognitive lifting of routine tasks that learners are performing, our assessment models need to evolve to measure what remains uniquely human and high value in their learning process. So, really, we need faculty and institutions and learners themselves to focus on process, not just simply output. So, grades and assessment of sort of mastery should reflect a student's ability to reason and fact check and ethically apply AI rather than just sort of final submission of an assignment. We need our institutions, our faculty, and our learners themselves to understand that AI is to support them in their learning, not to substitute learning. You know, with 47% of students using AI as a personalized tutor to break down complex concepts, improved grades can really signify deeper understanding that's facilitated by much better personalized and contextualized support. And, in terms of our ability to verify mastery to ensure degrees are and remain a reliable signal to employers, we at Coursera are focusing on rigorous AI tested proctoring, skills based assessments that prioritize critical thinking over memorization. And I do think this is evolution or revolution in thinking about how we do assessment is something that higher education institutions everywhere are going to need to think about, because ultimately for all of us the goal is to ensure that better grades are the result of more effective, deeper learning processes. And certainly AI can support that if we get it right, and if we have the sort of security infrastructure as well as the right policies in place to make sure that our institutional practices and our teaching and learning environment is supporting good use of it.
Something that really struck me from the report is that it speaks about how there's been a drop in confidence amongst educators about detecting AI generated work. So, down from 42% last year to 26% this year. I wanted to ask, do you think detection is even the right goal anymore? Or are we asking educators to focus on the wrong thing?
No, I do not think it's the right goal, or it's maybe I should say it's not the only valuable goal. And I think the data is really underscoring that. The race to be able to simply spot AI is one that institutions are losing. And I think that 26% figure shows us that. I think instead, as we were saying, a focus on redesigning curricula and redesigning how we think about assessment to actually prepare students for jobs or for pathways into future research should reward thoughtful AI use in the way learners are sort of personalizing and contextualizing their own understanding and their own learning. And should really also reward on the part of faculty integration of AI into learning processes and assessment processes. I think that's the way forward for the most effective focus for educators. Not simply just let's keep assessment and instruction as it is and try to detect cheating with this very, very powerful learning tool that all of our learners have access to.
Yeah, I agree. And I wanted to ask, if not focus on detection, where do you think universities should or perhaps could be focusing their energy and their investment in AI?
I think what institutions really need to focus on is investing in this moment of reinvention of education that is superpowered and supercharged by AI, rather than creating policies and practices that are meant to limit its use or detect its presence. And that means change. That means really rethinking the educational experience, how we teach, how learners learn, and how we assess their progress and verify that progress in ways that allow them to access these tools to personalize and contextualize their learning in really powerful ways. But for us to still feel confident that they are learning and they are developing mastery in the skill areas and in the knowledge areas that are so critical to their success in the future.
Yeah, and I think you raise a really interesting point there about equity of access to these tools, both to LLMs and the subscription models that they offer. And we are seeing this play out in the classroom with some students being able to access them and some not. When we think about AI, there are inherent risks of bias. We know that there are digital divides and access to these things. So I wanted to see, do you think there's a risk that AI is perhaps quietly widening some of these equity gaps that we've spent the last years trying to close?
AI absolutely has the potential to widen gaps that we've all worked so hard over the years to try to close. But I also believe that it can strengthen belonging, a sense of belonging, which we also know is so critical to learning if we design for it. Our research shows that many students worry that AI could erode the human elements of learning, like collaboration and connection with instructors and sort of the shared spaces and experiences that help them feel part of a community. And without intentional safeguards, I think this is true. AI can and will reinforce existing inequities, especially for students who lack access, who are still building foundational skills or may have gaps in their skills, or who don't work primarily in academic English. But I think the story with AI is not only about risk. I believe that if used well, AI can increase belonging. It can provide highly personalized, contextualized support that helps students feel seen, that reduces the stigma around help seeking that we know is there, and that can offer just in time guidance that for many first generation or international or working learners that they often struggle to access. And in that way, I think it can level the playing field if access and digital readiness are equitably supported in sort of the design of these AI supported learning experiences.
I just wanted to underscore Marnie's point. We are sort of seeing that in real time working with AI at Coursera. So, one of the tools that we've tried to provide to students across the platform, it's now integrated into 98% of our courses, is our Coursera coach. So, kind of an AI tutor that's grounded on our course material. But the one really exciting thing about Coursera Coach as a tool is we looked at its usage and its uptake among three specific cohorts that are often underserved globally. So, career starters, those without a college degree, and women. And we saw that in all three of those cohorts, they are more likely to use Coursera Coach as well. So I think that while, I think everyone across higher education is concerned that we might be seeing a widening of the equity gap at Coursera, we have also encouragingly seen that these tools, when access is expanded to them, do have the ability to really target key cohorts and reduce access gaps there.
With that in mind, the report speaks about how only 30% of UK universities have formal AI policies. And whilst it's slightly higher than other countries, that still feels like quite a low number. What do you think is holding institutions back from creating these more formal AI policies that allow people to understand this is the position that a university is taking?
I think what's great is that we're seeing educators really who are enormously optimistic about what AI could unlock. But the setting of that confidence and that optimism is institutions who have not yet built a healthy, supportive, enabling, accelerating policy environment around how they intend to use AI tools now and into the future. And I think faculty in that sense may feel very uncertain as they're moving forward, even when they're optimistic, that they're sort of out beyond what the institution is ready for. And that is something that institutions, and I think this has been sort of the center of our conversation today, is that institutions have a shared responsibility with their faculty to figure this out. And yes, there are policies that need to be put in place, but in my point of view, there are also sort of changes that need to take place in how we think about curriculum, how we think about instruction, how we think about assessment. And the time for making those changes is now, because AI is here to stay and it's only going to get more powerful into the future. At Coursera, our AI powered pedagogies are really built for diverse learners. And universities need to do the same. They need to move from reactive policies to proactive frameworks and support for faculty that give students and their instructors really clear expectations about where we're going together in the future of learning. And they need to provide faculty and educators the time and the training and the support to understand how AI and the AI experience that learners are having can really elevate the mission of the university rather than to replace its human core.
Yeah, thank you, Marni. I think that's a really nice way to kind of bring this podcast to a close, is thinking about the ways in which we need to ensure that that human core of education is not lost. Thank you, Jack, and thank you, Marni, for joining me today to discuss Coursera's 2026 AI on Campus report and for sharing your experiences and your perspectives of how AI will continue to influence and change the education sector. Looking forward to speaking to you again soon. Thanks so much and have a lovely rest of the day.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye.